To get this day started, I would like to welcome two very special people. I guess you might know them as Yugimoto and Seto Kaiba, Dan Green and Eric Stuart.
Thank you.
So, I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
I guess, since this is a panel.
Yeah.
So we're going to hit the ground running for a question for the both of you.
Okay. I have responses, but not necessarily answers. Let's see.
I view Dark Set of Dimensions as a story about loss. We see Yugi and Kaiba both dealing with the loss of the Pharaoh in completely different ways. Yugi is processing it and moving forward, while Kaiba can't move past it. As actors, how did you interpret the film and allow it to inform your performance?
Well, I did have more lines than you do, so I should probably say something first. No, seriously, so what was really great about being asked to come back to do the movie was, I directed the first 3 seasons of Yu-Gi-Oh for television, and we had to do a lot of editing and changing of things because of the rules of the US BS&P, the Broadcast Standards and Practices, and couldn't really keep a lot of the things in the sort of cinematic style that I think Takahashi would have appreciated. And the movie maintained that cinematic vibe. And so that was the exciting part about, oh, this is gonna be great, very cool. But the other thing was, the dynamic between Yugi and Kaiba has always been the same for me, whether it's that movie or the show. The idea of the rival, the idea of this, pushing the hero as much as I can to keep him at the top of his game. We're not enemies, and that's very clear. And I think that also became exceptionally clear in Darkseid. And you see Kaiba's passion and maybe a little over the top sometimes of having this dynamic, this duel, that's trying to wrap this stuff up. But honestly, I don't think there really is ever an ending to their dynamic. Whatever the cliffhanger is at the end, and no spoilers because I know you're going to see the movie today. But whatever the that cliffhanger is, I just think that idea of these two rivals, where I think Yugi doesn't hate Kaiba ever. I think he almost wants to help him. Right. Yeah. But what do they do when there's truly evil, and what do they do when there's truly an enemy? Is that they team up, and I think the movie really handled that well. So it was great, and it was really, to work with all those actors again and just see the natural maturity of those characters was fantastic. That's one of my favorite projects we ever did for Yu-Gi-Oh! So that's pretty much my take on the movie.
Yeah,
That's great.
yeah. And the way you frame that question, I think, is really helpful, because people do respond to loss so differently. I'm very often asked what's one of my favorite story arcs from the original series, and so often my response is what I really admire was the story that the whole series told, from beginning to middle to end, and I happened to portray a couple of characters that influenced each other's growth, or their story arc, or character arc. You might have heard that before. And I also thought it was remarkable that at the end of that series, Takahashi leaves the audience with a sense of achievement for Yugi, but also presents the audience with the difficulty of letting a character that you care about go. And that's an eternal, universal, mythic theme. We all encounter that in our lives in one way or another. And what you do in response to that, they say there's no wrong way to grieve. And I would subscribe to that point of view. And it's everyone's own particular journey. What you do with the loss of someone that you care about really informs the way that you care about that person, right? And Kaiba not being able to let go, well, that's endearing. That's kind of heartbreaking, because he can't be without that. Yugi moving on shows a different kind of strength, but Yugi is no less attached to and nourished by the relationship that he no longer gets to participate in, right? Forming new memories, right? So many people dispel or disparage or just poke fun at Yu-Gi-Oh! for being a 22-minute commercial for a card game. And I get that joke. Believe me, that was not lost on us. And there are so many more important things that are in the show that people really do hold on to. It amazes me. Eric knows I say this every time we appear together. Stop talking so much. No, I say, get out of here. But the other thing is that, it amazes me that we're here in the situation, however many decades later from completing the original series, and there's this audience of people who cares about that journey. So, anyway, that's remarkable. And that you have something that how many people here have friends from playing the game or seeing the show? Right? I know I do. Right. So, something that's added so much to your life is also, I think, underestimated in terms of how it helps you reflect on the value of life. And I couldn't imagine a more heroic sacrifice than Takahashi himself.
And that is, of course, why we are here. And that's why this day was created, to pay tribute to Kazuki Takahashi. And,
Dan.
nice to meet you, Dan. Well, no, thank you for that. And actually, Eric, to play off something you said, just curious before I move on to the next question, is this anybody's first time watching Dark Side of Dimensions?
Oh, it's my first time.
I am so envious. Okay. Just making sure. Okay, we can't spoil.
Yeah, no spoilers, no spoilers.
Okay. So the next question is for you, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I heard you attribute part of your inspiration for Tem's voice to Captain Picard from Star Trek.
Yes.
Again.
Yes.
Yes. Did anyone inspire you for Yu-Gi-Moto? I'm scared you're going to say Wesley Crusher.
The vocal choice for Yugi came purely from hearing the original, right? And seeing if I could in some way approximate that, because obviously you hear me talking, you're like, there's totally a 7-year-old boy in there. And it really took a while for me to get to a place where I felt I was comfortable with the voice, and some directors would want me to go higher or not so high, so there's a little bit of that moving around. But that's really where the source of Yugi's voice came from. I'm really glad that I had an opportunity to vocally get challenged in that way, and it really opened up a lot of other things too. Yeah.
Awesome. The next question is for you, Eric.
Okay.
So you were a musician before becoming a voice actor, and you've done many shows and toured with some big names such as Hall & Oates, Skinner, Ringo Starr's and All-Star Band. What is different in your approach and preparation between getting on stage and going into a sound booth for voice recording?
Probably wearing pants. No, seriously. So, I benefited from years of playing music. I had a live audience, right? I got to perform in front of people. And I consider live performance a dance. I am not performing at you, I'm performing with you, right? So as a musician, I have a set list, and it's really just basically a suggestion. I know that they are the songs I'm going to play, mostly, but I don't necessarily consider that in stone as the order. If I play a couple of up-tempo songs and I see the audience is kind of like, it may be too much, I can put in a ballad. If they're really into that, maybe I can keep it down for a little while, and I'm doing a dance with you guys, right? It's really a partnership. And I love that dynamic. I love that, the nervous energy of what is this audience going to be like? And the other side of that is I also like the fact, of course, nowadays we record everything, right? But what's amazing to me about live theater or live performance is it changes every night, even if you're playing the same songs or acting in the same show. The energy of the audience totally affects the energy of the actors or the performers on stage. And I love that it then disappears into the ether, used to, so that, you just remember the enjoyment of the night, even with all of the warts and all, and make a mistake or whatever, that disappears in the big picture of live performing, right? It was just a great night, and then you watch it back and go, oh, I sang the wrong verse in the second song. Well, whatever, they didn't know. But then you see the voiceover side of that, and working in the booth with maybe an engineer, or sometimes if you're self-engineering, like I do a lot, there's no audience. So you're just sort of, it's like you're acting in a vacuum, and you're like, is this funny? Is this gonna sound corny? Is this gonna work? How is the audience going to respond to this?
I remember a very earnest conversation we had during the shutdown times, and that was so hard for you.
Yeah.
Without being able to connect with the audience.
Yeah, no, just like, you're doing stuff and you're like, well, I could just be saying this stuff to myself and it's the same like effect. Is anyone even paying attention? Because I do, I love this. This is great. I mean, I'm a hermit when I'm not doing this kind of stuff, but I'm also, I love people. I think that that's what makes life interesting. But working as a voice actor, also I can portray anything that I can sound like, more so than as a musician when I could, this is what I look like, this is what you're gonna get. And so there's a lot of freedom that way. But I don't have to worry about like what I'm wearing or what, do I look exhausted, whatever. As long as I can sound the way I'm supposed to sound, great, and yes, there's times that I do voiceover work in my pajamas. It's just what I do, which sometimes people pay extra for. But yeah, it's
worth it.
Yeah. It is a totally different dynamic, but it is also, it's the theater of the mind. It gives me a chance to really portray things that, as long as I can sound like them, and I spent most of my career, when I would do work in the same show, I would challenge myself to find different voices or different registers, different placement, so that the fan base, when listening, would not be saying, oh, that's Eric Stuart again doing this, but, oh, that's Brock from Pokemon, or that's James from Pokemon, and then when you're 30 years old, you go, I had no idea that was the same guy. That's what's fun about that. If I was on stage doing it, you'd be like, it's the same guy. So, yeah, but good question, I appreciate that.
Yeah. I was actually listening to your album from 2000 while I was writing these questions.
My goodness.
And no, I have to say...
It's on a gramophone, right? You have to wind up...
No, yeah, I have to say two of my favorite songs is actually Raise a Little Hell. You can tell I'm nervous because I stuttered there. Raise a Little Hell and Corner Booth Chronicles.
Corner Booth Chronicles, that's a sleeper. That's definitely one of my favorite songs I've written. I probably haven't played that song in about 20 years though. So.
It was still fantastic, I love the beat.
Yeah, and for those of you that are creative too, it's like, and that's another thing, it's like we're sitting up here as voice actors for you, or as both of us are also directors as well, but, and for instance, Dan is a very talented graphic artist and also a great writer. Besides the music stuff that I do, it's like, okay, so the voice acting, the directing, I do a lot of producing, music producing as well. Creativity is our journey. And, yeah, that's what we love, and so there's no just one thing, that we focus on, and that's what also makes all of this stuff exciting. I don't think I could just do one thing. It couldn't just be music. But the songwriting stuff for me, and I appreciate you mentioning an album. I mean, we just released an album over COVID, which it's like our 10th record, which was a great project to do. But like, that's my passion. I never really make a lot of money playing music, but that should never be your goal in life when you have a creative outlet. You should just do what you love to do, and you'll find another way to make money. Don't put the pressure on your creative journey to always be the thing that makes the money, because then sometimes you hate your creative stuff.
It's true.
You
Creativity is its own reward.
Yeah, exactly. I know that sounds silly, because we're two successful guys in one category, but the things that we love to do as well are not the things that necessarily make us any money.
Right,
Yes.
right.
Speaking of creativity, actually, my next question is, you guys usually have to stick to a script when dubbing, but were there any times for one or both of you when you were allowed to improvise?
Dan?
Oh, so this is so rare when doing things that go on air. Dubbing some stuff that goes direct to video, very often they're relying on you to help do the adaptation on the fly. Like, you're like, oh, that's the meaning of the line? Okay, make that fit. But there was this really fun moment that happened. And so with Japanese animation, generally the audience is comfortable with a shot that has no dialogue and just, it's an atmospheric shot. There may be some music or you just hear the crickets or whatever. It's nice. But in America, we were very afraid of that, and there has to be talking.
Make it bigger and louder.
Or the show might have ended, and then we stopped watching. So there was this shot early on, I guess it was season 1, and the friends are out in the woods, and they have to be camping there, improvising this camping setup. And Eric said, "Hey Dan, we got this shot. We need just some dialogue over it to say anything." And so I said, "Joey, I don't think we're supposed to cook the candy bars."
Back off, I know what I'm doing.
Brilliantly, Wayne comes in later in the day, and his response was like so Joey, it was something along the lines of, "Leave me alone, I know what I'm doing," or something like that.
Yeah, for a lot of the early stuff that we worked on, like shows like Slayers and things like that, where the scripts were never written on time, and they'd be like, "Oh, I didn't even know
Well,
there
there
was
wasn't even an adaptation process.
No, and it was like, "Wait, there's lip
Translation.
flap in this scene. Could you say something?" And I'm like, "What's going on?" They're like, "We don't know. Just
Make it work.
yeah, right? It's got like 5 syllables. Say something." I'm like, "Okay, who ordered the ham sandwich?" That's great. Moving on. But yes, with the stuff that we had to do for network, there was such a process of the legal stuff and the network approving every script, every piece of all the visuals, anything that might offend somebody somewhere. Which of course you can always find something to offend somebody.
What do you mean by that?
Hey, oh. But yeah, and also I've got to say, I mean, the role I had at 4Kids for 10 years, I was a senior voice director, so I had a little bit of pull when it came to who wrote this script that I'm working on today. This is complete garbage. We're gonna fix this line. This is not the way that Yugi would say something, or this is not funny. And so there were some times that we would record as written and then do like, the Eric approved version of, "Hey guys," because I also had a very talented group of actors who could all ad lib in character, something that would be, that would fit with what their character would do.
Sure.
But most of the time, not so much. We weren't really allowed to do so much. Yeah. There's a great advertising expression, a camel is a horse designed by a committee. So we had a lot of camels sometimes on our shows. Yes.
I'm going to hold on to that camel comment for the rest of my life. Next question is for you, Dan.
Okay.
You mentioned how big of a fan you are of comics.
Sure.
Yes.
Are you still reading? And if you are, what are you reading these days?
I'm not reading enough of the current stuff. I have been going back, and I've been really enjoying getting these, what they call the artist edition of something. So you see it's printed in the proportion of the pages that the comic is originally drawn on, and you're seeing the original illustration. And I just find so much joy in looking at just the line work of an artist that I like. I recently got 3 books about Alex Toth, or Toth, I forget how you pronounce it, but he was huge in the 50s and 60s, and just, really beautiful illustration stuff. But I have been recommended a number of things, and so I'm eager to catch up on it. But I think the last thing that I read that really had such a profound impact was Monster. And this was an idea, Barry Windsor Smith, does anybody know this? Yeah. Barry Windsor Smith, Monster, right. Yeah. And so this was an idea that was kicked around, going to be a version or a Hulk story of some sort, but then it became too complex or whatever. So he spent his whole life working on this, and he's one of the best illustrators you'll ever see. The book came out a number of years ago, but man, that was good. And a real testament to the things that you do that you love, that you're not getting paid for. But wow, that really was an accomplishment, so huge respect for that.
And just a little foreshadowing here to set this up. Dan, as I mentioned, is a very talented artist as well, and some of the prints we brought with us today are his creations of
one
some
of them,
characters.
I think one of them.
Well, I've got my Kaiba one. Do you have your Yugi one?
Oh, maybe I got one of those.
Okay,
I'm not
yeah.
sure.
Yeah, so
I didn't bring a lot of prints today, guys, so sorry.
that's all right. But anyway, you can still check them out. They're very good.
That's very good.
Great. So my next question is for you, Eric. As you mentioned, you were a director of Yu-Gi-Oh. When you first listened to auditions for the first show, what exactly were you looking for from your cast?
So let's see, the Reader's Digest condensed version of why I was directing that show in the first place. So I had been directing a lot of Pokemon freelance for kids when they didn't do stuff in-house, and directing myself and directing the other actors. So they brought me in when they decided to do everything in-house, and they had a new show. When they interviewed me to direct Yu-Gi-Oh, some of the casting had already taken place. Some of the people had already auditioned for the show. And there was it was still deciding between two actors with Dan's part. They were still on the fence with a little bit of well, I don't know if it should be this guy or this guy. And so I really didn't have a lot of say for that. The only role that they had not picked for the first episode was Kaiba.
That's all. No Kaiba. It'll be fine.
And I know this is against sort of like the character of Kaiba, but the character of Eric is, when they brought me in as the director to direct Yu-Gi-Oh, I was working on a lot of other shows as an actor. I didn't need to double dip and say, hey, by the way, I'm a fantastic actor, I could play anything you've got in the show, and if that's the character, let's do it. So I didn't throw my name into the hat for Kaiba at all. And I continued to audition for, like, I brought people in to audition for that role. Probably 20, 25 of the male actors that you know from a lot of the shows that we worked on, they're all our friends. And our producer was not, he didn't hear what he was looking for. And it wasn't so much that we were trying to imitate the original Japanese, as we do with some things. The dynamic of the original Japanese Kaiba is much more intense all the time. It's like Johnny won, and nothing against the performance, that's the way he's been directed, but it was much, it was just too much for what we were trying to find. And the producer, Lloyd Goldfine, great guy, very creative guy, worked on a lot of G.I. Joe stuff. Every time I would play him another casting tape, he would say, no, I'm just not hearing it. And for those of you who watched the series, the first episode that we did is pretty much all Kaiba. It's like, so we were doing promos at the time, you know, coming soon to the WB, Yu-Gi-Oh! And I would say, not if we don't cast Kaiba. We're gonna just have to air some reruns of something. Don't we have like a Sonic X somewhere lying around, right? It was almost like in the 11th hour of the process of the casting, and the engineer at the time that we were working with, Joe Shalik, we call him Vegas, he turned around to me in one of the breaks of the casting session. It was just the two of us, and he's like, he knew that I had worked on shows, but he wasn't like familiar with my work. He's like, aren't you like a voice actor? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, you seem to understand this. Why don't you read for this? I said, well, because I'm the senior voice director, man. I can't just, throw my name in. And he goes, yeah, but isn't this something you could do? And I'm like, oh, I totally could play this role. And he's like, all right. So then the producer came in, Lloyd came in, and I said, Lloyd, I have a crazy suggestion based on the time frame and what we've got to get out the door. How about I dub half the episode as Kaiba? If you like it, we'll make it on the air on time, because I can complete it. If you don't, I'll just continue casting. We'll just keep going back. And he's like, okay, I just don't know what else to do. I don't know what I'm looking for. And so I dubbed the first half of the episode, and he came in and listened to about maybe the first 5-10 lines. He's like, yeah, this is what I want, walked out. And Vegas turns around to me and goes, you couldn't have done that a month and a half ago? He said, maybe we've gotten a lunch break or something, and not to pat myself on the back, but the idea of what I understood as a director and an actor, what I was looking for, what I understood the producer was looking for, and that dynamic, that conversation, that dialogue you have with another creative person is, you really have to understand, the language that they use. If they're using references of other celebrity, actors, are like, I'm looking for something like this. Are you looking for the voice quality of that celebrity actor, or the image that what are you looking for? I understood that what Lloyd was waiting to hear was not the voice. He was looking to hear the way that I could handle the sarcasm, and that walking that line of not being a villain. There are those that didn't like Kaiba because he was so obnoxious, but then there was a huge fan base that wanted to be Kaiba because he was so cool. And that was just in the acting more than I put on a voice. I mean, you hear me speaking to you, it's not that far away from Kaiba's vocal quality, but it's all about the attitude. So yeah, and I think the writing was really very solid. It helped with all of the cast. They all had something redeeming, and it was more about, as we worked on the show and developed it, it was really not about who's got a wacky voice for this. It was really who can interpret this stuff and make it so that, yeah, I like Taya, I like Tristan, I like Joe. It's like you like them all. There's someone for everyone in that. So yeah, there's the weird backstory of how I ended up giving myself the starring role. Oh, I mean the second starring role on the show.
I was just about to say, Kaiba is an anti-hero. He's the worst kind of hero there is.
That's right.
So this is a question for both of you. I really enjoyed listening to the Heart of the Cards podcast that you both did on YouTube. I think there was some amazing discussions about mental health and general life issues. The last episode was about 9-10 months ago. Do you have any plans to continue?
Yeah, we do. We've actually just been sidelined by both of us having different things in our lives. And for me, it was an onslaught of a lot of audiobook work, which I didn't intend to take up as much time as it has. But we very much want to continue having those kinds of conversations. And we are so grateful that anybody was listening to them in the first place. The Heart of the Cards is not a podcast about playing duel monsters. But we talk about creativity, inspiration, and dealing with what we're dealt, both the good and the bad. And that's such a wide enough, thing to talk about that anybody, I think, could understand the kinds of things that we're talking about, and we don't presume to know better than anybody else. We just offer some of what our perspective is on these kinds of things. And we've had wonderful people on the show, from voice actors that you would recognize for sure. And I want to also make sure that when we get back to it, that we're not just creating content. I mean, as much as we all love content, I don't think that Eric and I are interested in just putting out a half an hour of us talking just to let you know that we can still talk. So we want it to be substantive but yeah, I am looking forward to getting back to that for sure. I feel like I've been holding my breath for about almost a year to get back to the things that I most want to do, not to denigrate anything that I'm currently doing. I'm very lucky to have the work that I have. But
yeah, but that goes to the thing that we were talking about earlier about the fact that we do a lot of things, and this was definitely a passion project. We enjoyed this. One of the things that really got us to do the podcast in the first place was the stories that you've shared with us when we finally get a chance, when we started to go back out and do conventions and do appearances, the individual stories that you guys shared with us about life. I think that we've all had someone that we go, I look up to that person or whatever, and I want to do what that person is doing. And sometimes we forget that they're people and that they also have their own struggles and their own challenges. And that when you get to talk to someone that maybe is doing the thing that you want to do in your life and you realize how human they are, it might give you the motivation to go, those guys can get through their baggage and stuff, and this is the path they took. Well, maybe I can get through the stuff I'm dealing with to do stuff on my own. And so Dan and I were really just sharing a lot of our own experiences, both good and bad,
For sure.
just because we felt like, okay, you think, oh my goodness, he's got his stuff all together. This is great. It's like, no, wait, okay. And then there was that, and there's also the good stuff that we share too, but it's real, and we thought that would be very helpful. So Dan came up with this great template of following Joseph Campbell's The Hero's Journey.
have you guys heard of The Hero's Journey?
Yes.
I'm
Right.
assuming are a number of the people in this crowd interested in storytelling generally? I mean, because this is the moving image museum, and there's a lot of story. Okay, I figure. All right, so that's good to know. So yeah, and those are basically just touch points, because anybody will understand the idea of a call to adventure, right? Oh yeah, that thing. I really wanted to do this with my life. I remember that first started when.
Yeah, and when he came up with that idea, and that was the other thing too. It's like, well, what do we talk about? Because yes, if we were just going to be like, well, okay, we just want the numbers and we want people to listen, I'll just be Kaiba, you be Yugi, and we just talk about that stuff, and they'll be like, well, that's cool. But that wasn't really something that we felt we needed to share with you guys. We wanted to share something a little more real. So having the hero's journey as the starting point of each conversation was really very interesting. And a lot of the people that were connecting to the show were saying, oh, that's what got you started, and that's what made you make that choice, or that was the challenge that you dealt with. And I thought that was really smart. So I'm putting it on Dan again to give us another sort of template. Of
No
what,
pressure, no pressure.
But yeah, thanks for asking about
But
that.
you
It was
mentioned
really-
specifically
Yeah.
the mental health aspect
Yeah.
of it, which was not really the focus, it just came up, you know? But it is nice to hear that, that there are some people who are getting some value from that. I know that I'm not alone when I can say that I've lost people in my life who could be with us had they received the help they could have gotten, you know, in the right period of time. So, just wanted to bring everybody down. But also, you know, Andromeda Productions, I guess we should really give them the full enchilada.
Yeah, you should tell them.
Because Andromeda Productions, which is the production company that we formed, that was actually in reaction to having done this movie. Because Eric was basically saying, let's get the band back together. And I don't know why he uses these band terms. I understand what he's getting at. And he asked, well, hey, so do you have any ideas? You know, and I was like, well, yeah, I'm the kind of person who has like kind of like a catalog of ideas that for stories or what have you. And so, well, there was this one idea that I'd worked on for a while. And so that became something that we recorded, and the cast is everybody that you know from Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh, and they're our friends, and the style of acting is not at all similar to Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh. That's not a judgment, that's just a value assessment, right? It's a much more grounded, realistic style, on-camera kind of acting. Anyway, but I'm doing the visuals for that, and it's taking me forever. And so the podcast was kind of like, in the meantime, we'll do the podcast.
And when he says doing the visuals, he's hand drawing the visuals for the show. So he's not
starting
sitting
by
yet.
growing the trees
Yes,
first,
yes.
then making the paper.
But that just, I mean, so, you know, our friendship has grown even more. I mean, we've been friends for a long time, and we actually doing an event where we after the movie, and we sat down and we're, you know, having a meal together and just talking about creativity and stuff like that. And I mean, that's another thing for the motivation of whatever you guys are interested in. You know, we spend a lot of time in our lives working on things that someone else created. Yes, I have my stuff with my music, and Dan's got his stuff, you know, but this was like, hey, why aren't we doing something original? Because there's definitely times we've worked on projects where we've said, who wrote this? How did this go? Right? And yes, and we're like, well, do you have something that you think is at least as good, if not better? And as self-effacing as my dear friend is here, he's like, well, I did this thing, and I'm like, this is amazing. This is what we should be doing. And once again, not where are the dollar signs to it, but if you don't produce that and don't make this thing that we can do ourselves, you will regret it, and it will have sat on a shelf somewhere. At least let's do it and put it out there and just see if anybody else reacts to it.
Yeah.
And even if they don't, we had to be proud of what we were putting together. So that series is going to be something I think you guys will be talking about at some point, going, I remember that panel where they were, the Yu-Gi-Oh thing they were talking about, but Crossing the Gods, that's a cool series. It's an illustrated audio drama. Okay? So imagine like 5 to 7 minute interstitial episodes, hand drawn, black and white, not lip flap, but shifting motion a little bit. But it's about the important things in the story, not all of the filler stuff. So it's truly each panel of a comic book kind of vibe is only the important things, and all of the narrator stuff is we know it. It's visual. There is no narrator.
Right.
But it's a really, and I sum up the theme of the entire series is all of the characters, these heroic characters. They all have flaws, the way we all do in real life. And the message that I got when I first read this was, you have to save yourself before you can save others. So the things that they're all dealing with are very reality-based. It's not just we're being invaded from space.
There's not a
It's
power
not
came
stuff
from the
like
sky.
that. And so I think that, and we got that too from just the interaction. We thought this is something that could be, you could connect to. It might even help some people as well. But it's a cool story.
And also, just to echo or reinforce something that Eric was saying. So the idea that you should have done something with your life that you didn't do, the what if life, that is, as I get older, one of the feelings I hate most. And I think one of the other ones, which is closely related, is knowing what it is that you really, really want to be doing, but not doing.
Yeah, I mean, I've said this in our panels, that what if are my least two favorite words.
Exactly.
Because honestly, like, if you don't put your creative stuff out there, you'll never know what it could be, and also it'll help you. And you can always go back to the other thing you're doing. You can always go back to that stuff.
And it's way better to have failed at something than to never have given yourself the chance to succeed.
Yep. And so he might kick himself that it's taking him this long to draw the stuff, but when you see what he's doing, and when you see the product, you're gonna be like, dude, that's totally understandable.
You're a film savvy crowd. I bet some people in here know what an animatic is, right? So it's like that, just like but with finished illustration, right? Yeah, it's similar to that.
Yeah.
And full sound.
And the characters are really cool, especially one of the main villains. Oh, wait.
It's so funny. I couldn't find the right actor for this role. And Eric, after months of trying, Joe Vegas came up to
That's
me
right.
and said, "Cast him!
Come on!
I want my lunch break."
So, next question again for both of you. But two more questions, and then I'm going to see if I can open it up to the crowd for a bit.
Very good.
No pressure whatsoever.
So, since I'm just going to put it this way, Yu-Gi-Oh deals with the past and future legacies of characters, the Pharaoh, Gozaburo, even Seto and Yugi. As a performer, are you both satisfied with your legacies?
Great question.
I was just having this kind of conversation with my mom last night about how we
Wait, why are you laughing? He has a mom.
yeah about how we look at our lives and think about how we're being judged or how we compare ourselves to someone else. And unfortunately, I lost my stepfather on Monday, 93 years old, lived a very full life. And it's sad, but it's a relief, and he's in a better place. But as we're putting together his obituary, we're discussing his life, and thinking about, like, was he ever satisfied? Did he think that he compared himself to his brothers, and never felt that he was accepted in the same level? And I said, well, that's comparing yourself to other people, or thinking of what other people are going to think of you. And my goal has been for a very, very long time, yes, I want you guys to like me. I mean, obviously, I do enjoy that, and I'm humbled by it, I'm flattered by it. But my goal has been, especially in the creative or the artistic world, is to satisfy myself with I'm better than I was yesterday, or I've grown from what I was doing the day before. So in terms of my legacy, I look back on a lot of the early things that I did, and I laugh, or I go, oh, that was pretty cool, or even if it's the music stuff, oh yeah, I know exactly where I was and who I was at that time. And do I get better, or do I just evolve into something that's different, but also something that I think growth is really the word. I am humbled by the fact that the shows that I worked on just happened to be shows that connected with an audience. I don't necessarily think it's because I was the right voice for that character. I was lucky to get cast in roles that were on shows that were solid. And obviously with Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh, there's two huge legacy shows that will go on longer than Eric Stuart will. And hopefully those performances will go on longer. And it's like Batman is my favorite character, okay? You could all have your favorite Batman, or who played them, but they're valid interpretations of it. The character is larger than the actor who portrayed them. And so I am proud of my legacy. I'd like to continue working and doing certain. I mean, I would love to play Kaiba till I can't do any voiceover anymore. But I don't look back and say I should have done this differently, or you know, for the time it was the right choice. And I don't really watch a lot of my performances from back in the day, but when a fan shares something, I might click on it and go, oh yeah, that was pretty good. Okay, I get that. So it means more to me in terms of my journey, that I feel like I am not just riding the wave, but I'm constantly challenging myself each day to do something creative and do something different, whether it's better or at least it's addressing it and not just resting on my laurels and going, yeah, it's all good. I'll just phone it in. So hopefully that made sense to your question. Okay.
The idea of even having a legacy is not something that I would run past myself. And I find it so surprising, even still, after making appearances pretty regularly for the last couple of years, that there's you guys that care about this. I've often said, I was just trying not to get fired. You know, and I happen to be a part of something that became as popular as these things were at the time and remain, which is remarkable. So I feel incredibly grateful for the amount of attention, the amount of affirmation, the amount of compliments, and all the generosity that's come my way from this is really extraordinary. But similar to what I think a part of what Eric was getting at is that it just simply isn't my nature to be satisfied. Not that I'm dissatisfied, not that I am contemptuous of what I've accomplished so far, but I want something to wake up to in the morning, to get done, to do, right? So, and when I do hit something and I feel good about it, I say, well, what else? What next? Right? And I'm not like this super go-get-em kind of guy. Eric can vouch for that. I'm not like this gung-ho type A personality. And it's also true that while I will acknowledge if I did something well, I won't like pick it apart and say, oh, I could have done that better. But if I can do something well, then I should expect myself to do something well and see if I can do better. Otherwise, I'm letting you down.
Also, that was two fantastic answers right after another. Also, in the spirit of you saying, trying not to get fired, that's what I was trying not to do when I pitched this idea.
You didn't get fired.
I didn't get fired.
Success.
And we're here.
I don't know, you got a nice crowd, you sold out the screening, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
The day's not over yet, though. So, to end on a little bit of a lighter note, since we are in the Museum of the Moving Image, I have to ask, if you could do any role in a movie, animated or live action, no holds barred, who would you want to play? I want to know, because personally, if it got rebooted, which I hope to God it doesn't, I would immediately drop everything and become an actor to be Chief Brody from Jaws.
Oh, yes.
Wow. Would you fight with Richard Dreyfuss?
I would fight. Right?
Okay. Well, my answer is easy. I would love to have an opportunity to play Batman in any capacity whatsoever. When I was about 8 or 9 years old, you guys are probably not as old as I am, but you remember the Halloween costumes that looked like you were wearing a garbage bag that had like Batman or Super? It's like just a box, like or like
So good.
it's like it's like Hefty brings you Batman, right?
Very
Like,
few kids suffocated.
Right?
Very few kids suffocated.
So I had a Batman version of the garbage bag Halloween costume, which wasn't only worn on Halloween in my world. And my father was a defense attorney in Brooklyn, so he was a trial attorney. And there were times that I would join my dad for like murder trials, dressed as Batman, because I wanted them to know that I was watching. And if you think I'm kidding, I actually have a picture of that I could show you of me sitting in court in my Batman outfit. Now I had to take the mask off, so they all knew that it was true, that I truly was Bruce Wayne. I just always felt like, I'm not as much of a comic book guy as Dan is, but I did have my fair share of them. what drew me to Batman as a character was he was real. He didn't have any superpowers. And he also, if Batman was one notch to the left, he might be a villain. He might be, because he has a lot of issues. I had a lot of issues as a kid. I related to the fact that he was torn between that decision of good and evil, and just barely, kept to the good side. Definitely challenged a lot to cross that line. So I liked that. I thought he could be real. I could be him when I grew up. So I would love to do that. Now, of course, Kevin Conroy, the ultimate voice of Batman. May he rest in peace. Just really captured that essence in the animated world. I'm a big Christian Bale. Batman Begins, because it went back and told the story, and I could do a pretty good Christian Bale if I had to. Right? But I even like the new one. I gotta say, when you strip it down to the core of trying to figure out your outfit and what's working, and that's what was cool about Batman. So yes, if anyone ever wants to cast me as Batman, it's basically Seto Kaiba.
Someone please cast Eric Stewart in a Batman Beyond movie.
Friends and I are trying to spitball and sucked it. You got my approval. I know my friend.
Eric Stewart a new Batman voice.
All right, we got it going on. Yeah. I'll keep my response in the same milieu, and I'm fortunate that I don't have I don't see a lot of stuff out there and be like, oh man, I wish that was me. Whoa. But characters that you might know that I think it would be fun. I'd like to have fun with Magneto. And maybe Lex Luthor. But I would also love to portray an aged Captain America.
That is
Like the
amazing.
super soldier serum's worn off or whatever. We've seen old Cap in the comics. We've seen that. So yeah, that would be a nice trio.
I wasn't expecting those answers, but I'm glad I asked. And also,
Villains are fun. Check me out in Yugioh.
And that's the other thing too about the hero and villain thing. I think one of the things that was amazing about Batman Begins is a lot of the actors that normally play villains played good guys, and a lot of the actors that normally play good guys played villains. And that's to me that makes, like, when Dan is playing a heroic character, he also understands the dark side of that. No pun intended. But that's what makes a hero performance more interesting to me, is that there is also that depth.
We want to do this. It's not ever going to happen, but let's talk about it.
Yeah.
So I had this idea to do the manga with all the voices that you know from the show. And I put a minute of that up on my socials years ago.
Season 0.
Season 0. And it's when just the scene where Kaiba, spoilers, swipes blue eyes from trusting Yugi. But I wanted, as a fan of comics, and I wanted it to be like you were reading the manga, so the images were going, this way, right, from right to left, as opposed to from left to right, and it was purely everything that Takahashi put on the page, right? We can't do that. We don't have the rights to do that. But I think, speaking of dark heroes, Yami is quite a different thing than what he is in the cartoon. I'm not criticizing that. I'm just letting you know that.
Yeah, all of them, man. Joey and Tristan are like gang members.
They're thugs. But like you say, everyone's redeemable.
That's right.
Anyway, had to just throw that in there.
Eric, before I open this up to the crowd, I just have to say, and I hope this just boosts your ego a little bit, makes your day. When I went to go see Dark Side of Dimensions in theater, I was actually sitting right in front of you guys.
Oh.
But when I had to go to work immediately after, and the first thing I said when I walked into work, people were like, "Oh, how was the movie?" And I was like, "Seto Kaiba's Batman." I'm not going to say which part for the two people here who haven't seen it, but there's one specific part in the desert where I was like, "Seto Kaiba's Batman."
I appreciate that. I definitely was channeling that. It was just so much fun to see that movie with an audience. and I live in Nashville, and we had a theater that was showing it, and I called them, and I said, hey, I live in the area, and I'm in this movie. Of course, they were like, what? Who is this? And I was like, yeah, can I promote that I'm going to go see this movie so that the fans can come join me? Because I want to see it again, and I don't want to just see it alone. Because I love the reaction. I love to see how, oh, they did laugh at that line. And so, yeah, I had a whole group of Nashville Yu-Gi-Oh fans with me for the second time that I saw that movie. So it was a lot of fun in the theater, yeah.
That is awesome. Okay, so we have a little bit of time.
Yeah.
As I'm checking. Okay, so I'm going to do the honor system. I saw hands going up in order. I'm going to do this in the honor system. Please give the mic back. Yeah.
Oh my God.
You can pass it back.
You're not going to run around in the audience like a talk show?
Before I ask my questions, this sounds dramatic. Originally, when the mic was passed to me, I thought I was going to say something funny, like, oh, I would take a bullet for you both. But I thought more about it. And I thought, wouldn't it be much nicer to say, I feel inspired to live because of what you've done?
Well, that's very kind of you to say.
Instead of saying I would die, I want to say I would live.
Thank you.
That's quite like the affirmative.
Okay, 2 questions. So, one is for Mr. Stuart. In the beginning of the Duel Monsters anime, Kaiba is seen reading this book, Zarathustra, by Friedrich Nietzsche, and I was wondering if you have any opinions about Nietzsche and how it relates to Kaiba.
Wow, that's heavy.
It's a big book.
Yeah. I think what's going on is that Kaiba has a shield
Yeah.
as a person. He needs to show everybody that he's stronger than they are, smarter than they are, richer than they are. I think a lot of that stuff is just to protect himself. Whether he actually read the book or not, or had someone read it to him, because he paid them to do it because he was doing something else, like taking an elevator to space. I think that that's really what's going on. I think it's all for show. Would that be a book that he would read? Maybe. I don't know. I think that Kaiba's much more interested in like family stories, but he would never show that, right? Right? Because I mean, his relationship is truly about protecting himself and his brother, but that would be way too showing his soft underbelly to do that. But that's amazing that you remembered that from early on in the series.
Thanks.
Yeah.
And my question for Dengri. So this is like, it's not really, I can't say it's a fan theory, it's more like a fan interpretation I have. So after like rewatching Yu-Gi-Oh! And Dark Side of Dimensions a lot, I kind of have like an interpretation that Atem is sort of like a Christ allegory. I've been thinking about it a lot, and I want to know your opinion on that interpretation, I guess.
Sure, I think it wouldn't be strange to template that or see, sort of what matches about those kinds of things. I mean, if we're talking about a character that you as the audience are relating to, and then they pass on, and yet they somehow also remain. I think that's, I was raised Presbyterian as a form of Christianity. So yeah, I can see, those kinds of things. I mean, we do have a character who's also in the example of the Pharaoh from antiquity, from thousands of years ago, which we also associate as somewhat similar to the story of Jesus. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for your
Yeah, good
Yeah,
questions.
yeah.
Very good. Come on down.
You with the puzzle.
Oh, look at that.
Which one? Which one was the puzzle? Which one?
You're there.
Hey there. Puzzle.
Hey.
Hey guys. I guess a question for both of you guys. So, Dark Side of Dimensions is a movie that is kind of an epilogue. Oh, and also, Dan, I recently saw that video where you were with Wayne. You were like dubbing a duel you guys were doing.
Oh, yeah. They filmed
So,
this
I had a question. For getting back into an old role that you've done before, or any role, do you guys find that it's like getting back on a bike, like, it's all familiar, or do you find that, oh, it's been a couple of years since I played this character, should I fill in some gaps?
Leaving a character and then returning is like visiting with an old friend. And that was literally my experience when recording Dark Side of Dimensions, because I was recording the same studio that the original series was recording, had been recorded in. So I was literally seeing the same people in the same space, and that was wonderful. And one thing about returning to Yugi that I had a good time with Darren discussing was aging him up just a little bit, vocally. But yeah, when you invest in performing a character for a long period of time, it's not hard to put that character back on. I'm sure that you feel the same way.
Yeah, I mean, my approach to a lot of my voice acting stuff is I start with my bag of tricks, as I like to call it, and it's like the starting point for voices and things like that. So in terms of finding that voice again, it's not like I have to search for that, but the attitudes, I still do the voices of all the characters that you pretty much know me as, but in real life. I mean, I'm, surprise, surprise.
wife's a little concerned,
I can do the sarcasm, okay? I'm from here. You know what I mean? Right?
We do them when we make appearances.
Yeah, so
all
we
day
do the
long.
voices all day long. So, but going back into portraying the role with a script, I could run, I joked around about this at one of our recent appearances. Both Dan and I, and we're not going to do it tonight or today, could ad-lib an entire script of a Yu-Gi-Oh episode in character, as long as it didn't have the gameplay, right? But it's not like we'd have to go, well, what would he say here? We riff all the time when we're doing stuff because we know those characters, we know how they speak. It's great to go back and play them in a performance, but it's not a workout to try to remember what we did or, oh, how would he do this? No,
And it's fun to return.
Yeah, I mean, I could turn on the Kaiba stuff in the cab on the way here.
That's how you pay for your cab.
That's right.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
You're a third-rate cab, and a fourth-rate cab.
Turn on 68th Street, Avenue, and Place. Hey.
So this is for both of you.
Yep.
So besides Yugi and Kaiba, what were some of your favorite roles that you've ever played?
Well, mine are the big three: Brock and James from Pokemon. Those with Kaiba. And Butch, yeah. I mean, funny bad guys. I was a big fan of an old show called Wacky Racers. And I would root for Dick Dastardly and Muttley to win the race every time because they made me laugh. And so Team Rocket, that sort of stuff, and May, Rachel Lewis, rest in peace, one of my co-star and friend who passed away recently, very, very funny and talented person. That stuff is something I'm very proud of because it didn't matter what was going on in the episodes. Even before I started directing myself on the show and I would come in to do Brock and James, I'd do my Brock stuff and then be like, okay, the director would say, okay, so this is the story, this was going, I said, I don't care. I'd be like, what do you mean? I was like, I need to be funny in this scene, right? Okay, I'm gonna just be funny. Whatever else, everybody else's lines, blah, 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 blah. It's about Team Rocket. That's what it is. We're gonna come in, make you laugh, blast off. That's my goal. And yeah, so it's the big three, Brock, James, and Kaiba.
And Meta Knight.
Oh, you like the Meta Knight, no? Yes.
I have a lot of characters that I really enjoyed playing, and some of them you can probably guess. Like I mean, doing Entei in the third Pokemon movie, that was really thank you. Yeah, so grateful. Such a wonderful little fairy tale of a movie. So that was awesome. But I don't know if you noticed, but 4Kids put me in a lot of stuff to sound deep and heroic and manly. And so it was such a nice breath of fresh air, a change of pace when I got to do Hudson Orstachio and Viva Pinata. But even more, this is more obscure, and most of you won't know this. They did this show from France called Pat and Stan. And oh, there we go. So, and I got to play a very hysterical and overreactive, feminine-sounding hippo. So,
As one does.
right.
Yeah, that was a funny show. Viva Pinata was great. I mean, Hudson Orstachio is one of my favorite performances of yours.
It wasn't that Hudson didn't love his friends, he just loved himself a little more.
It was great.
My next perspective.
Getting in your steps today. It's good.
I know I was a bit late, but when I heard your word of wisdoms about not being perfect in an artistic industry and creativity, I just want to say thank you.
Yeah,
Because I'm
sure.
actually a bit of an OCD when it comes to like
Oh,
doing things perfectly,
Yeah.
especially when I dress up or cosplay, or especially when I do my art. I just realized I just let my creativity flow. So, my question is, I know that there might be some newer Yu-Gi-Oh shows, but would you ever do like a crossover? Would any of these original Yu-Gi-Oh characters, would you ever do a crossover with any of these characters with the newer Yu-Gi-Oh shows?
Sure. Sure.
And if it was, what would it be?
Well, I mean, I'm Bastion on GX. That's a new show. But also,
that was only 15
yeah.
years ago.
But we recently made. I mean, we were on some of the other. I don't even know. There's like dragons and this and that. It's just other versions. There are motorcycles and stuff. But Dan and I just did a little guest appearance on the newest season of Yu-Gi-Oh.
It's true.
That's going to be
Non-characters we've performed.
Yeah. So yeah, we enjoy doing that stuff. I mean, there would definitely be some cool crossover. I do get a little confused with some of the newer installments of the stuff. You know, I'm a little old school when it comes. Even if we didn't play those characters, it's like I'm a Kirk and Spock fan. Like I like new versions of Star Trek, but I'm still like the OG. So
Let me also
yeah.
add to the answer, though. I'm really glad that they haven't brought the Pharaoh back just to bring the Pharaoh back.
Yes.
That would be very disappointing. That would be very disappointing.
Yes, but good question. Yeah, that would. I mean, I would love for Kaiba to come back and teach those guys how to duel.
He has a school and he could do it.
That's right.
What about an
Or hire someone to teach them how to duel while I'm just doing my own thing. Yeah.
What about an
He'd do that himself.
A good question. Yes.
What about an infamous episode when, I don't know how to say, but there's an episode where there's a guy who like he speaks in a kind of like in a I don't know how to explain it, but he sounds different from the Japanese version. I don't know what episode
Variations
it is.
happen in the dubbing process, yeah. I have an idea that maybe what Yugi's up to is he's solving...
Or,
He's,
yeah, that's what I was talking about. They're talking about something like that.
oh. But then maybe Yugi was looking at the problems of the world like game theory, and he was able to solve problems through game theory. That would be a Yugi thing. That would be
We're good. Yeah.
So, is there somebody next?
Yes, you've had your hand up for a long time. Senior, I'm gonna pass the mic back to you. Yeah, you.
Hi. This kind of goes back towards the legacy question. So I'm a middle school science teacher here in the city.
Cool.
And two of my students actually dressed down in Yu-Gi-Oh shirts. One with like the red eyes black dragon. They were brothers. And one with
Joey's
the blue
card?
eyes. And one with the blue eyes white dragon. So I had asked them, I'm like, are you into Yu-Gi-Oh? And he was like, yeah, like I just started on Netflix. I said like the original Yu-Gi-Oh or like new school Yu-Gi-Oh. They're like the one with the guy with the eye and they're in the forest. I said original Yu-Gi-Oh. Okay, great. And all the kids were just like, what is she watching? What is she watching? What is it called? This and that. And sure enough, like a week later, I have a horde of students at my desk like, can we ask you a question? I'm like, whoa, okay. Is Kaiba gonna defeat Pegasus? He just like, my mom made me shut off the TV last night at 12 a.m. and I just need to know, is he gonna beat Pegasus? And I'm like, listen kid, you're in for a journey. You've got like 4 more seasons to go, my friend, before we find out what happens, but I'm not gonna spoil it. But anyway, my question is, knowing that there are kids out there, even like 8, 9, 10, like the younger generation, that are watching this show, how does that feel for you guys? Because they love you. I even said I'm coming this weekend. They're like, oh my God, tell them I say hi. That's so cool. I'm like,
No, that's
Just
amazing.
be there for that kid with the orichalcos. Really be some damaging stuff.
that's what I said. I'm like, guys,
No,
it's like,
that's really amazing. I mean, that's amazing. I mean, that's the cool thing about these shows is that they're bigger than we are as the actors, right?
Yeah.
You know, you can say Pokemon to a 6-year-old and to a 60-year-old, and they were like, "Oh, I've heard of that. I know what that's about." They won't know how to play the card game for Yu-Gi-Oh, but that's all right.
I don't know how to play the card game really.
But no, it just goes to show you, like, there are all these new shows that come out, and I'll tell you that there is a very easy formula to why certain shows last on all levels and why they don't. Because I've directed so many that are done well, and seen ones where I'm like, I don't think I want to direct, I'm going to work on this one. If there are no redeeming qualities about characters, if the story is not there, so that there is at least someone you care about, that you actually want to know, does Kaiba defeat Legacies? You could have the coolest animation, the loudest music, the most famous people in it, and it'll be a dog. And you'll just be like, I don't care. I just don't care. You could have stick figures if the characters are someone that's redeemable and the story is well written, and you'll watch that and you'll really care about those characters. And so a show like Yu-Gi-Oh, where there are characters you truly care about, that's why Takahashi, that's why he was the person he was. The creativity of and creating this world, that's all from his mind. And we were just lucky to be able to interpret it for this audience. So no, it's very humbling to be part of that. But the show and the concept are much bigger than we are. So, yeah.
Thank you guys again. 2 million questions.
We have time for one more, and I'm going to pick them from this side of the room. All right.
Hello.
Hey.
Hi,
Hello.
I'm a big fan of you guys. I really am. I really enjoy Yu-Gi-Oh! It has been my favorite since my childhood. And once again, Dan Green and Eric Stuart, my condolences to Rachel Lil. She was a great actor. I really admired her in Pokemon as well. So for Dan Green, this is mostly a Yu-Gi-Oh! And a Sonic related question.
Okay.
Okay, because I am a huge Sonic fan. I always been
Awesome.
Sonic the Hedgehog has been my favorite video game character. So to Dan Green, what would happen if Yugi Muto or the Pharaoh or any other various characters that you play in Yu-Gi-Oh! Would teach Knuckles the Echidna Duel Monsters, or Storm the Armatros from Sonic Riders Duel Monsters, or even your villainous character, Mephiles the Dark? But if I would be Mephiles the Dark, it would be for Eric Stuart to do, aka for Seto Kaiba, because Kaiba's like the rival and Mephiles the Dark is like a rival to the shadows.
Okay, but your question is, what if the Pharaoh or Yugi taught Knuckles Duel Monsters?
Yeah, or Storm.
Or Storm. Okay, so I think for Knuckles learning Duel Monsters, the Pharaoh, even though he learned a lot from Yugi, would still not be patient enough. So Yugi would have to take over and say, "It's okay, Pharaoh. First off, we just have to take the card off the pointy knuckles. That's not what we do with the cards." And then Knuckles would be like, "Oh, well, that makes more sense now," or something like that. But, I think that Knuckles would eventually get there.
How many fingers does Knuckles have?
Enough.
Does he have 3?
All of them.
3 and a thumb, right? Like Mickey Mouse or whatever, right? I just don't think he can pull the cards well. He can't do that.
I wouldn't underestimate.
Yeah, right?
Well, that's what I mean. He would
Yeah.
punch the cards, and then it's like, well, no, then you have to
Impale them. Impale the cards. I like it.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, Knuckles can duel because they taught a dog to duel in Zexel, so if a dog can do it, Knuckles can do it.
Fair point.
The dog control, and that's what's important.
Oh, there you go.
There you go.
There actually was a dueling.
Hi.
Okay, so I'm currently rewatching the series, and Kaiba's best lines of the dub are in Waking the Dragon. But for me, the favorite storyline for Kaiba is Duelist Kingdom. So for you guys, what were your favorite lines to voice, but what were your favorite character moments?
Well, my favorite, I mean, if you're watching for the first time the series, I don't want to spoil too much, but I like the Egyptian story arc because it sort of justified my approach to how I was doing modern day relationship between high schoolers, right? How could I be his sparring partner in modern day, right? That doesn't really exist. So pushing him, annoying him, stuff like that was kind of the modern day version of when you go back and you see what their true relationship is. It made sense, the choice and of course, as the actor and the director, we didn't have that stuff ahead of time. So I really enjoyed going, okay, good choice for the first 2.5 seasons. Okay, I got it. In terms of the individual lines, I'm asked a lot when we do these appearances, when I'm doing the autographs, to add like an additional Kaiba snarky quote. And I mean, I would probably let you all down if I didn't say, you're a third-rate duelist with a fourth-rate deck.
Well, so as I mentioned before, I think what I admire most about the whole series is that it is a story. Duelist Kingdom, that's kind of like the honeymoon period, and we're realizing that we're in a show that is gaining the popularity that it gained, and it was also a very satisfying arc in itself. Orichalcos has a lot of darkness in it, which is, I thought, very interesting. But the Egyptian, understanding the full story behind the pharaoh and all the spirits that are continuing with him through time, also is great. But at the conclusion of people ask, what's your favorite duel? And it's not because I portrayed both characters, but because it was the totality of the story being told. The final duel is I think really great, just from a story structure perspective. But in terms of favorite lines, there's so many. And summoning Exodia for the first time was the first time that I got a sense of where the show was going. Like Eric said, on the director's side, they didn't necessarily know it was going, but the director definitely is several episodes ahead of the actor who's showing up, right? And then you're just like, what now? Okay, jump in. And so that was that stands out. But in terms of the line that I get to say, and we were talking about this earlier, about going to these appearances and meeting wonderful people like you, and just because you've grown up with the stuff, there's an attachment that you have to these lines that we've said, and it's sort of like we have this superpower. We have the ability to press this button that only we can press. And my favorite quote from the show is, "Believe in yourself and you will always prevail."
Well, that was one hell of a way to end. Well, thank you. That wraps up our time for the panels. Thank you guys for joining us. And thank you, Dan and Eric. For
Yeah, good stuff, guys.
So at this moment, I will have to ask all of you guys to vacate the room for a second. We will prepare for the meet and greets in just a little bit, where you will be allowed back into the room. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
I need to